Welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Jeff Pegues, joined as usual by CBS News senior national security analyst Juan Zarate.
Jeff, great to see you.
Let's talk about the conflict that's bubbling up now between Saudi Arabia and Iran. What is at the root of what's going on there?
Well, there's a couple of things at play. Long-standing conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia for influence both in the region geopolitically and within Islam itself. In some ways, they represent the major sects of Shia and Sunni Islam. Iran in terms of Shia, revolutionary Shia, and Saudi Arabia in terms of the Sunni world. So what you have is a conflict that has been enduring for some time that has really come to a head, and now you have a flashpoint of conflict.
Yeah, and this is something that you have been discussing for some time, that this was a problem that was going to bubble up, and now we see it happening. And it's happening at a time when there's already conflict throughout the Middle East, and this is another issue. So how does this complicate U.S. national security interest in that region?
Well, you're right, Jeff. What you've had is a festering conflict for some time. It's escalated. In 2015, we saw the manifestations of it clearly in war, in Yemen, in conflicts like Syria, emerging tension in places like Bahrain. And so the level of proxy battles and warfare in that context has increased. That creates instability for the region, certainly challenges for the United States. What this recent flashpoint does, and this rupture of relationships between Saudi Arabia and Iran does, is it escalates this conflict even further. And I think the challenge here, not just for the United States, but for the rest of the world, is that this is not going to go away. Even if this spat is solved, these are two countries that have resolved that they are, in essence, in conflict and at war with each other, and they're going to do it via proxies.
Yeah, and I don't know why I was just thinking about this, but let's just say you have a dinner table, and they're all gathered around the peace table, if you will, trying to solve many of the problems in the Middle East. You have the Saudis, you have the Iranians, and then you, of course, have the U.S. and others in that pot. So if you're in a house and you have all these different parties around the table, and there's bad blood beneath the surface, how do you solve the problems that are happening right now in the Middle East with that kind of conflict below the surface for now?
You're absolutely right, and it complicates the challenge of solving Syria, first and foremost, where you need those parties at the table and their proxies, Hezbollah, Sunni extremist groups, to actually cooperate to come with a solution. Yemen, which is, at war, and they've tried these peace deals,
and that's
they
something
fall
we don't
apart.
talk about all the time, but Yemen is still there, and that's still an issue.
And the Saudis see that very much directly as a direct hot war manifestation of this conflict, where they're literally fighting, right? It's not the United States leading this, it's the Saudi Arabian government along with the UAE, their Sunni allies, against what they see as direct Iranian support to Houthi rebels and the Iranian proxies. And so that is a hot war on their border. And so they see this as a very real threat to their regime, encircled, and they think as well that the Iranians are meddling in their own country, in the eastern provinces with their Shia population. And that's in part why they executed this Shia cleric, and that's in part why it has been such a spark of controversy in Iran and between the two countries.
All right, so how do U.S. officials calm the tensions here?
Well,
or do they stay out of it?
No, I think the U.S. wants to calm the tensions. They don't want to see an exacerbation of any of these conflicts that we're talking about. And they certainly don't want to see extremist groups advantaged by this. They don't want to see Sunni extremist groups getting more support from Saudi Arabia or Qatar or the UAE because they are seen as proxies to fight against Iran. So the U.S. has an interest in dampening this tension. The real problem here, Jeff, is we've lost credibility over the last few years.
How so?
The Saudis are listening to us much less. They see the Iran nuclear deal as a demonstration that the U.S. is now siding a bit with the Iranians. They see the red line debacle in Syria, where the U.S. declared that we were going to act against Assad and then didn't, as a sign of weakness. And they've demonstrated both in what they've said and what they've done that they don't trust the United States as they once did. And so in a sense, Saudis are going to go it alone. And we've seen that in Yemen. We're seeing it here. And we can tell them what we want and we can ask them to do what we want, but they see themselves in a battle for influence with Iran, and they're not quite sure the U.S. is going to be there with them.
All right, and we'll have to see where you know, if the Saudis go it alone, where that leads this new crisis.
And where new flare-ups and flashpoints emerge. Watch Bahrain, by the way. Watch Bahrain.
We will. We will. For Juan Zarate, I am Jeff Pegues, and that is Flashpoints.